Welcome to the Pocket. I am your host, Scooter, and here for you guys today, we got your NFC North offseason video. One move to help fill the biggest need for every team in the NFL, division by division. So far, we've covered the NFC East and the AFC North. If you haven't seen those two videos, go check it out. Drop a like on this one and tell me in the comments after you're done what you think about the four moves that I say. So, the NFC North this year, by record, was the best division in the NFL. Two teams were racing for the one seed at the very end of the season, and it came down to the last game of the regular season between the Lions and the Vikings for that one seed. Now, the Lions ended up winning. They finished with a 15-2 record. The Vikings right behind them at 14-3. The Packers, probably one of the few 11-win third-place teams you've ever seen. And then you have the Bears all the way down at fourth place with 5 wins and 12 losses. Where does that put them in the draft? For the Bears, they have the first pick in this division at 10th overall. They're the last 5-12 team. That really sucks. They could have been number 7, but they're 10. And then you got to go all the way down to 23 and 24, where the Packers pick first, but they are back to back with the Minnesota Vikings. Very curious to see if any of these teams try to jump each other for a position where they have a common need at, sort of like the Eagles did to the Giants back in the day when Devontae Smith was in that draft class and the Eagles jumped just ahead to draft him. And that was very disappointing. So curious to see if that happens here. And then the Detroit Lions, a little further down at number 28, with a 15-2 record, they lost in the divisional round as the one seed to the Washington Commanders. Very, very upsetting loss for them, but the defensive injuries built up for them. And we might as well just start with the Lions. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to give you what the common idea of their biggest needs is, but I'm going to tell you what I think they should prioritize most aggressively. I'll give like 2 honorable mentions. So I sort of give you my order of priority. And for the Lions, it's going to be edge, cornerback, wide receiver, guard, and defensive tackle. How do I order these? It's really tough. It really is. And I actually want to preface this Lions section with saying they definitely could make a push for Myles Garrett. In my NFC East video, that was my primary suggestion for the Commanders. I do think they are the best fit or the team in the best situation to make a trade like that. So I gave it to them instead of other teams that are in the running. But I did just want to note that they could definitely do that. Aiden Hutchinson was having an amazing season last year, but after such a brutal leg injury, not sure if he's going to be quite the same guy coming back. So whether it's acquiring a guy like Garrett or just actually prioritizing it in the draft, edge is definitely somewhere they could look, but I'm not going to say that that's their biggest need or anything. And now that I'm talking about it, I'm just going to kind of flow right into my next point because it's kind of hard to find a need for this Lions team. I mean, I would naturally say corner should actually be the highest priority need for them, assuming whether they trade for Garrett or not, they do still have Hutchinson. So the way I view the Lions is I was thinking about what happened to them this year, how they had a bunch of injuries and they disappointed as a high seed in the playoffs and, had a very disappointing end to the season after just last year being right there in the NFC Championship with the 49ers who were right there with the Chiefs, right? So you would imagine, oh, they're at the top of the NFL. What happened this year? Well, it really is injuries. And who they remind me of is the Eagles. I mean, last year, the Eagles, they lost in the first round to the Buccaneers. They had a bunch of injuries. A.J. Brown, without him, they're already a different team. But there were other injuries. I'm pretty sure Slay was hurt. I think Devontae Smith was healthy, or maybe he wasn't 100%, but they had a ton of injuries is the point, and they lost in their first playoff game to a team that was ready to go. They were healthy. They were getting pretty hot towards the end of the season, whereas the Eagles were going down with the injuries. With the Lions, it was sort of the same thing. I mean, they did finish strong, earning the 1 seed by beating the Vikings, but you just look at, the way that they were competing down the back end of the season, getting into a bunch of shootouts and not winning because your defense can't hold up is not ideal if you're trying to make a push for a Super Bowl. But I would definitely consider the amount of injuries they sustained last year as an outlier and not an indication that they lack depth on defense. They actually had those guys come in and play not too bad for too long, but it didn't last. You can get away with that for a game or two, but once the offensive coordinators get film on these guys and figure out what their weaknesses are, it's just over. And that's what happened. That must be what Cliff Kingsbury was able to do to completely expose their defense. Outside of the Lions offense, also, they did turn over the ball quite a bit, but game script, okay. So yeah, my point is that I actually don't really feel like there's a strong aggressive need for the Lions, but getting an impact guy like Garrett would definitely help. But let's look at some other options like corner. So for me, you're looking at free agency for this. You drafted Terrion Arnold last year, and he might develop into a better player, but right now you're not getting the immediate impact you need from him. So I think targeting the positions that you need when you're close to a Super Bowl should be done through free agency or through a trade. So the best corner available, if he does hit the market, would be DJ Reed. And with the Jets collapse, it's actually looking pretty imminent that he will be on the market. And he's probably going to want to go to a winning team. He's probably sick of the dysfunction that happens in the Jets. And I think he'd even be willing to take maybe a little bit less money. He is 28 years old. So it's not like he's in the prime of his career and you got to give him this massive deal. But if you say you sell him on a deal saying, hey, listen, we want you for 3 years. So you're 31 years old. If you're still good, obviously we'll extend you, but you're going to be right there in our Super Bowl window. And the little bit of extra money that we could have paid you that you are gracefully allowing to take a pay cut for, we can spend elsewhere and give us a better chance to win. So I think the Lions should try to trade for Myles Garrett, but if they can't manage to do that, go ahead and sign DJ Reed. You got to spend some of this money on some immediate impacts. I've been saying this about a lot of these teams that were playoff teams or very close to a Super Bowl, that you need immediate impact, depth, and rookies is always great, but if you're trying to get over the hump, it's just better not to rely on a younger guy who most likely needs to develop to get there. Up next, we're going to talk about the Green Bay Packers, a team that I predicted to go to the Super Bowl in the preseason. And now that didn't happen. They did lose in the first round to the Super Bowl winning Philadelphia Eagles. And not only that, they only lost by 12 points, which was like the second most competitive playoff game against the Eagles. I believe it was the Rams who lost by 6. Yes, it was them. The Chiefs obviously got blown out. Packers only lost by 12. They were right there. I get Jalen Hurts. That was his rustiest game. But the Packers, they have a lot of talent, and they really are close. I don't see a reason why they can't compete with all the other teams in the NFC. We see them play close against the Lions. We've seen them play close against the Vikings. And it looks like the 49ers aren't going to be an issue anytime soon. So it's just the Eagles. You need something to help you get over that hump, just like the Lions. So once again, I'm going to preface this and say all of these teams that are close should be making a run for Myles Garrett. If he's not worth the money, then no one is. And also, not to mention, if you don't get him, the Lions might get him instead, right? So that's like a double negative. And if not the Commanders, the team that knocked you down from the 6th to the 7th seed, and that ended up being very costly. So you don't want these other NFC teams to get Myles Garrett. That's probably where he's going to go. I don't think the Bills or any of those AFC teams are going to be able to afford him. So once again, just prefacing with that. But I'm going to suggest that the primary need for the Packers is wide receiver. And once again, it can't be a young rookie wide receiver. I'm sure there are wide receivers in this draft class who are capable of stepping in and come playoffs, be ready to be a number one wide receiver. But are you willing to gamble a Super Bowl on that? Right. So I'm once again going to say it's got to be targeted through free agency or a trade. This Green Bay Packers offense is run first. They acquired Josh Jacobs last year, ended up being an excellent signing. He panned out very well for them, but what didn't work out for them was their collection of wide receivers. They don't really have a number one wide receiver. It's been supposed to be Christian Watson, but he can never stay healthy. He's super talented, but if he's not out there, he's useless. You got Jaden Reed, who is looking like their best wide receiver, but I'm not calling him a gadget guy, but he definitely lives in the slot or, sort of those play action roles where you get him on the move, you get him in open space. It's part of the run game, opening it up for him. It's not that he's like this number one route running wide receiver. Romeo Doubs is sort of that separating wide receiver, timing guy, out routes, the guy you want, to use to move the chains, but he just doesn't quite have the upside of a true alpha wide receiver. You got guys like Wicks there in the third spot, or that would be the fourth spot, Bo Melton in the fifth, and they're all pretty good. They have great depth at wide receiver, but they don't have a true alpha. So, like I said, they need to get one of these top guys who are free agents or, sort of on the trade block. So let's take a look at those two guys. First off, I'm going to talk about Godwin. I would consider him, but he lives in the slot. Jaden Reed is going to stay there, so he's already out of the picture. But that does leave us with T. Higgins, who's sort of on a pending franchise tag. Not so sure if he's going to want to sign it. Bengals might just, get him to sign it and then trade him somewhere. But T. Higgins has been a very productive number 2 wide receiver throughout his career, and I believe he is one of the 2 best true X wide receivers in the NFL. So that means, high point fades, just any jump ball in general, or even if you're working in the short game, he can box out defenders and make contested catches for first downs. And that's all really good. Even on play action, a big body like T. Higgins who can get open, you just chuck it up and hope he goes and gets it. Could be a pretty good fit in this Green Bay Packers offense, but I think there's an even better fit and maybe even a cheaper option. And that would be Seahawks wide receiver DK Metcalf. I think they should trade for DK Metcalf, and let me tell you why. Like I said, Godwin's not quite, there's no room for Godwin, right? The slot role is already sort of filled. Higgins is a good deep threat and good in play action, but to maximize a guy like that, you really need like a lot of accuracy to put that ball exactly where you want it to be, like a back shoulder or something like that. That's something Joe Burrow was very good at, and that's something Jordan Love is not good at. He is not accurate. He is a very talented quarterback, but he does tend to spray balls here and there. So although T. Higgins is a very talented wide receiver, and it might seem like a good idea on paper, he's not quite the best fit for him. I think DK Metcalf is. In this play action, outside zone, inside zone, just this running scheme that the Packers love to do with Jacobs. They ran a lot of like pulls, duo. They did a lot of creative stuff, but the bottom line is they're a run first team. And what that does is it makes you, it gives you the luxury of having a lot of your pass plays be dependent on it being play action, right? The defense is expecting run. So the linebackers creep up, the safeties creep up as you fake your handoff. And then dudes that are running down the field or across the field, the defensive players covering them can lose track of them because just for a brief moment, they thought it was a run play and they abandoned that assignment. So when you have that sort of offense, you can sort of trade off a little bit of route running in your wide receivers for dudes who are more athletic, harder to tackle because it's the scheme that's getting them open. It's the fact that it's a play action play. And DK Metcalf was at his best when, first of all, Russell Wilson was playing really well, but they were initially a run first team, right? It kind of faded away and went into more of a pass first thing. But DK Metcalf on deep crossers, posts, fade routes, not to mention his ability to block. He can be out there every play too because they're going to want to run the ball most of the time anyway. I think he's a great fit in this Green Bay offense because he doesn't have to be this number 1 possession wide receiver either. They don't really rely on their wide receivers in that sense. That's definitely more of Jacobs' role or Tucker Kraft to sort of move the chains in that way. You do have a great rotation of wide receivers who can get open in different ways. Like I said, Jaden Reed with the play action. Romeo Doubs is a bit more of the reliable guy, but Love isn't super accurate, so he can't make the most advantage of him. Let's get a number 1 wide receiver like DK Metcalf to stretch the defense out. And also, he can break some tackles on some of these passes, break away some long touchdowns, and give you some of those explosive plays that you're looking for that they've been missing since Christian Watson hasn't been able to stay out there. So one move the Packers should make this offseason is to trade for Seahawks wide receiver DK Metcalf. Up next, we have the Minnesota Vikings. Their biggest needs are mostly going to reside on defense. Aaron Jones is going to be a free agent, so could be running back as well. Interior offensive lines in there. But they have a strange offseason, and they do have a lot of work to do, but they've got a ton of cap space, a lot of players with the expired contracts, lots of flexibility there. Brian Flores knows what he wants. I think he's going to get it. He's going to get it in a lot of ways you're not expecting, because they fit the scheme. And if you're just a casual football fan or even a somewhat committed one, you're probably not going to be able to, know the complete ins and outs of the perfect scheme fit for every defensive player, right? That's these coaches' jobs. So where am I going with this is that this is not going to be about acquiring a player. This is going to be about letting go. The Vikings just came off this magical season. Like I said, they were fighting for the 1 seed. Sam Darnold, he had one of his best definitely had the best season of his career and maybe one of the best career resurgence seasons I've ever seen. He had a 66% completion percentage, over 4,300 yards, 35 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. And you're thinking, wow, this is a no-brainer right here. Well, you really can't ignore the previous 6 seasons where if he played any more than like, looks like 2 or 3 games, one game he probably played for the Niners in 2023, looking like maybe it was 3 or 4 for the Panthers in 2022. He's never had a QBR over 77.7 more than once. He had it his second year. That's when people thought the breakout was coming. But Sam Darnold, you know, he's had a rough career, but I'm really not one to, give up on a guy. I'm really not. I stuck with Daniel Jones for years. So why am I hesitating here? Well, we saw Kirk Cousins do something very similar with this Vikings offense. And you see him go to the Falcons, and I don't think that was really like some horrendous offensive situation. I get he was coming off a torn Achilles, but that was still pretty similar to the Kirk Cousins we saw in Minnesota, who couldn't really move in the pocket. Um, this Minnesota Vikings offense is extremely QB friendly. The way that they run the ball, they set up play action, lots of dump offs. Like I was explaining with the Packers, it's not really about the wide receivers getting open. It's just they're schemed open. When they get open in play action, they're like wide open. So I'm not saying Sam Darnold didn't improve as a player. I'm not saying he didn't have a successful season, but it really does come down to the fact that you do have JJ McCarthy on the roster and Daniel Jones. JJ McCarthy is the future, and they need to take advantage of his rookie deal. If you really are this good of a team so far, you won 14 games. Why don't you get this rookie quarterback in there as soon as you can and send some of that money elsewhere instead of having 2 or 3 quarterbacks on your roster getting decent salaries? And JJ McCarthy did have a setback during the season, so he might not be quite 100% by the time the season starts, but they can sign Daniel Jones for pennies. And I'm honestly willing to bet that he can give you something similar to what Sam Darnold gave you this year. Now, it does sound pretty crazy to say that Daniel Jones will throw for like 35 touchdowns or anything like that, but the fact is we haven't even seen Daniel Jones on another team yet. We've seen Sam Darnold go to the 49ers, go to the Panthers before he showed up here, and he was still looking pretty bad on those teams. I mean, I guess the one game he started for San Fran wasn't too bad, but before this Vikings team, that 49ers team was the QB friendly situation. Now it's the Vikings, now it's the Eagles and other teams like that. So if Sam Darnold's going to be commanding like at least like 20, $25 million or something like that and hoping for like a 1 to 3 year deal, I don't think that that's worth it at all because you want McCarthy for the future anyway. You want him out there, and you can have Daniel Jones start the beginning of the season. He's going to give you everything he's got. He's going to be the coach's pet. He's not going to screw up too bad. He's got a decent floor. The ceiling's not super high, but that's not what you need in this offense, or that is what you need in this offense. So it is sort of a financial thing. If they didn't have Daniel Jones, I might say, well, you should hold on to Darnold, but it's going to be expensive. But the fact that Daniel Jones is there, you could basically keep him for free and get ready to start your rookie quarterback and spend all this money elsewhere where you really need it. I think that's what they should do. So the Vikings should let go of Sam Darnold. I guess that was sort of cheating. Technically, you're not feeling the biggest need, but I would argue quarterback is always one of the big needs, right? I think we can all agree on that. And they've got to move. They've got to make moves in that position group. So I am considering that a move. Sorry if you disagree. You can argue with me in the comments. All right. Now let's move on to the Chicago Bears, our last team. They finished in last place. Their biggest needs. One of them actually just got addressed. I believe it was like today. They traded for Chiefs All-Pro offensive guard Joe Thuney for a 4th-round pick. What a move! Now their offensive line, which is where it was their pretty much their most massive need, is going to be Braxton Jones at left tackle, Joe Thuney at left guard, which is really, really good, way better than they've been dealing with. Who's this Jackson at right guard, and then Darnell Wright at right tackle. Okay, so they don't have a center right now. I wonder what they're going to do with Tevin Jenkins, but I guess this might be an indication that they're ready to just let him go, let him hit the market. You did pretty much just fill that spot right away, so you're only really looking for center or depth, and they have other needs. Edge rusher is definitely up there. They could use another wide receiver now that Keenan Allen is gone. They could definitely use a running back. I don't think Swift is back, so we know Ben Johnson is the new head coach. And we've seen him draft guys like Gibbs before, so a lot of people are going to say Ashton Genty. You could say edge rusher is the primary need, and they're in a good spot for it, which they are. James Pierce Jr., Mike Green is going to be in that range too. Michael Williams, if you like him more. So they're going to have options for edge. They're going to have option. They might have Ashton Genty available there. We'll see. But to me, honestly, O-line's still my main concern, and I think that's the direction Ben Johnson is going to go. I don't think he's going to be satisfied going into the season knowing 4 of his offensive linemen, assuming they let go of Tevin Jenkins. I think he's going to want to pick up another one, and I think that is what they should do. Your primary objective should be to protect Caleb Williams. And I understand edge is sort of a need, but I personally didn't view the defense as much of an issue last year. So I don't know why you'd go there with your first round pick when your quarterback got sacked 68 times, third most in NFL history. So can we agree they need to go offense? Okay. Now that we agree on that, at this point for me, you should know offensive line. It's the blanket upgrade. It helps your passing game. It helps your running game. It even helps your defense because it helps your run game so much. And like we know Ben Johnson, we know what he did with the Detroit Lions. He built up that run game and he was able to get that going with Jared Goff into an elite offense. So if Jared Goff nonetheless was also number 1 overall pick, but I would say is not quite as talented as Caleb Williams, just imagine what Caleb Williams, an elite offensive line, and Ben Johnson could accomplish together. I don't even think it would matter too much who your receivers are, but you are going to have Roma Dunze for the far future, even if you can't retain DJ Moore. Cole Kmet is still there. Running back, this is a deep class. I think they will add someone later, like maybe Omari and Hampton in the second round. That could be a good pick. They will be picking pretty high, so they'll have a good chance to do that. But I think for them, if you look at the draft board, and you try to project what's going to be there. It can be a little difficult at times, but I think we know Hunter Carter and Cam Ward will definitely be gone through the top 3. Tet McMillan, Mason Graham, Ashton Genty probably gone. I do have a feeling the Raiders will end up taking him, kind of like they just took best player available last year. And then you have sort of a mix. It could these next 3 picks. You could include the Raiders with it, but I'd say these next 3 picks are a little less locked in. The blue chip prospects are gone with the exception of Tyler Warren, maybe Jahad Campbell. But you got the Jets who need defensive linemen and corners with DJ Reed probably being gone. The Panthers, they just need defensive everything. The Saints, they are just in hell with the cap, and they just need to completely restart their roster, which means they probably should go for a high priority position like edge. So that would be like James Pierce Jr. or Mike Green. And if those 3 picks go defense, and if the Raiders go Ashton Genty instead of because Ashton Genty, Mason Graham, and Tet McMillan should most definitely be gone. I would assume that someone could reach on someone, but those 3 are probably going to be gone, and that's going to leave you with your first choice in the draft of offensive line. And I just can't see Ben Johnson passing this up and going, oh yeah, let me just take some other position when the best offensive linemen in the draft are available to me, and he gets to pick which one he wants. So whether that is the guy I select or if it is somebody else is definitely a question, but I'm just going to say they're going to pick Will Campbell, LSU tackle, but you could kind of move him around the offensive line. They do need a center, and he's not a center, but I do believe Ben Johnson can figure it out with this injection of talent between Joe Thuney and Will Campbell. If you can't shuffle things around and sort of figure out who can play center, then you've got issues, right? Because you've got 5 starting offensive linemen on your hands. Figure out a way to get them all in there and all starting. So at worst, Will Campbell is going to be like depth and insurance for the offensive line. That's going to be good for Caleb Williams in the run game. But at best, he's a starter. He might even replace Braxton Jones in the future, and you can once again draft a center, right? So you go tackle, running back, center, or something like this to start it off and just completely focus on the offense. You've built a run game out of nowhere. You've built pass protection out of nowhere. So like I said, even though actual need is center, I just think taking the best offensive lineman available, we've seen that work really well for teams over the years. And I don't see why Ben Johnson in his first year on the Lions would do any differently than, the Lions' first year in the Dan Campbell regime. And look at that, Campbell. Alrighty, guys. So that is your take for the Bears. I think they should draft Will Campbell or just best offensive lineman available in their eyes. Ben Johnson would know better than me. And that is it for the NFC North. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you disagree with any of my takes or think some of these teams should go in a different direction, please share with me your thoughts in the comments. I can't get enough of this offseason content and information. There's always so much of it to cover and so many great ideas, all the possibilities. It's so much fun to talk about. So please don't be shy. Tell me in the comments what are your thoughts. Subscribe if you haven't already. This is our third division covered. Now we have the NFC East, the NFC North, and the AFC North. If you want, I could put a poll or something down in the comment section and you guys can vote on the division we should do next. That sounds like a good idea to me. And yeah, that's going to be all for this one. Appreciate you all so much. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.